Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for November 14th, 2017. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee, on the line right now to talk about Italy's shortcomings yesterday in the last few months. Anthony Totera of Red Card Radio. Anthony, I know it's a tough morning, but good morning.
Tough? No, guys. I celebrated this Italian funeral yesterday. This was an unbelievable moment in Italian soccer history. It's a great moment. It's an important moment. It's a moment for the purest at heart to smile and say, finally now, hopefully things will get done that needed to be done years ago. This is fantastic because the old racist, disgusting guys like Tavecchio and Ventura will be booted out. Long overdue. Maybe we'll get a Maldini. Maybe we'll get some other players like Albertini, former players in positions of power, to actually make a change and make a difference.
Well, Anthony, I guess, I'll jump right into that point to continue on that. When we saw the U.S. fail to qualify, Kevin and I talked at great length with that. We had a whole special with a lot of American voices on, and they all sort of said that maybe there would be a blessing in disguise there, that there would be a reckoning, a look inward to see what was wrong. Italy has famously been very conservative when it comes to the game and their sort of choices that they make. Will this be something that you think sort of propel some more progressive thinking forward in the Italian Federation?
Absolutely. It has to. Let's take the example of Napoli this year. I don't know if you guys follow Serie A, but Sarri, this coach, has done wonderful things with that squad. We saw Jorginho, who finally, after that fool, that donkey, Ventura, was embarrassed by so many, myself included, for the longest time, to call him up, plays his first game with the Italian national team jersey on, and looks absolutely brilliant, and he looks the part right from the get-go. To me, you need a complete cleansing of thinking, of mentality. No longer is Italy that defensive nation that can park the bus and defend with the best in the world or be the best. They're no longer that, number one. Number two, we have to start thinking like Sarri, like Spalletti, these type of coaches, Di Francesco, and start thinking more modern, more offensive, more creative, and less if you guys watched the game yesterday, it was comical. It went from Bonucci, Cellini, Bargiali. When they needed a goal, even with 4 or 5 minutes left, they kept on playing it back that way and continuously crossing the ball in the box. And it made no sense because you got 6'2", 6'3" Swedish defenders and midfielders that aren't going to lose those headers. It was a joke.
Fair enough. That said, it will be weird next summer to not have Italy in it, especially in the city that Anthony and I live in Toronto, and Kevin too, the large Italian population. How, on a personal level, I know you're a proud Canadian as well, but on a personal level, how weird, how upsetting will it be next summer to not have a home team to cheer for?
Well, honestly, Duane, I think you know me long enough. I'm not going to be that sad. It'll be a little bit different because you know me. I'm a proud, first and foremost, Canadian. And I want to see Canada in the World Cup. I've seen Italy win World Cups. I've seen them play in Euros, on and on. Sure. I feel for my sons more because it's funny. I was at an event on Sunday, and my boys were there, and they're like, "Dad, don't worry. We're going to get through." I said, "Boys, listen to Dad. A steak dinner to both of your choice, wherever you guys want to go. I guarantee you they won't get through. And if Dad's right, you're going to write a check to the hospital for sick children, both of you, and we'll send that off at my name." Well, that's what they did after that whistle. They were disappointed because, of course, they've got Portuguese friends, English friends, all these type of friends, and it's, Italy has at one point, I think I saw the stat, Italians, 1.5 million Italians in Canada, and more than about 800,000 reside in Ontario. So digest that for a minute, boys.
Yeah, no, it's it's a big population that will be disappointed. When you look at the last few years, Anthony, in 2016, the team that went to the quarterfinals of Euro 2016 in France with Antonio Conte was an old Italian team as well. Not as old as this year's, of course, but you could see the beginning of the lack of chemistry, of I don't want to say passion, because there's one thing Italians are not missing, especially footballers, is passion, but passion without direction leaves you a bit lost. Where did it all go wrong? Is it Ventura's fault 100%? Is it just a lack of adaptation towards the new football game that has been played internationally over the last 4 to 6 years? Where did it all go wrong? Because, Anthony, it has been not only 12 years, it's been 12 years since Italy has been world champion.
Bravo, Kevin. Bravo. And you make a lot of great points there, Kevin. So let me try to answer each and every one of them. You talked about passion. I got to tell you, yesterday night on my show, and I talked with the former assistant coach of Napoli and former assistant coach of Montreal Impact. You know him, Kevin, Enzo Concino. Enzo and I talked live from Italy last night. I mentioned to Enzo, watching that two-leg series with Sweden and watching all this World Cup qualifying, there was not one player that would bleed and die for that jersey, lose teeth, lose blood, break all sorts of bones. There's one guy that did that years ago that they haven't replaced, that heart and soul, not with the talent. That's Gennaro Gattuso. So you talk about passion, you talk about respecting that jersey, none of those players did. Maybe Gigi Buffon, but the rest did not. That's number one. Number two, yeah, it's been decaying for a long time. Antonio Conte got the best out of that group of Euro because he's a tactician, he is a wonderful motivator, and he knew what to do. Ventura is a stubborn old donkey, and he did many things wrong. I give him 75% of the blame. I give the players 25% and him 75% of the blame. How in the world, Kevin, how in the world do you leave the most creative, dynamic young player on the bench and sing for 2 games? The first leg you put him in, and you could see the video clips of him yelling back at that donkey saying, "You're putting me in a position I've never played before, and you're expecting me to do something?" Fool. Yesterday, he didn't put him in at all because he's a stubborn old fool, because apparently, from what I understand from some of the people that have spoken to me from Italy, that he was upset, Ventura, that Insigne talked to the media and he basically blasted Ventura, which he deservedly should have been blasted. But to me, it's 75-25. These players, talent-wise, player for player, and you look at Sweden, no disrespect to Sweden, and they earned to go to the World Cup, and they did it marvelously. But on paper, Italy still, with the team they had yesterday, is much better than Sweden, boys.
Anthony, now what I'm wondering is, will there be ramification? Will there be some negativity? It's the apocalypse. It's Armageddon in Milan and in other cities in Italy today. People realizing their country is not going to be in the World Cup. What are going to be what's going to be left of this? Yes, of course, Ventura is going to resign. We all expect him to do so today. But what else? What is this moment going to mean for Italian football?
It's going to mean a moment of reflection. They have to now start to eat a lot of humble pie. The arrogance has to be rooted out. And because when you put that jersey on, just like you put a Canadian hockey jersey on, a Montreal Canadian jersey, you have to understand what it means to put that jersey on, and the tradition and the respect and the winning tradition it has, number one. Number two, I hope finally, this is a wake-up call for the next coach that comes in, to start to believe in the young players, like a Donnarumma. God bless Gigi Buffon, but Donnarumma should have been playing some of these World Cup qualifying games. He didn't play one. He didn't get a taste. Okay? There's other players like Chiesa. There's other players, young players, that should have been inserted to get that taste. Even if they would have made it to Russia, you were going with an old squad. You were never going to go anywhere. Another thing, Serie B, a second division coach on the weekend, basically blasted Ventura of the federation because of foreigners, too many foreigners and not enough opportunities for Italian players. I think that's a little bit way out there how he explained it, but I don't disagree. They have to start looking at it and limiting the amount of foreigners, limiting. Bernardeschi, that came in yesterday as a sub for Italy, can't even get on for Juve as a starter. He doesn't have a starting position. But there you go. He's on the national team. So they have to rethink how many foreigners they can have on their squads each and every Sunday when they play in Serie A. And they have to say to themselves, okay, we have to mandate that so many Italian players must start. We started the year that after the USA didn't qualify, Duane. I remember talking, and we said this is a wake-up call for the U.S. because MLS was started for their players to develop, not for others.
Fair enough, Anthony. And you talk about the stubbornness of the tactics, and there's a stubbornness of selection as well that I see as an outsider on this Italian program. And there's an example right here in our backyard. And this is a topic that's been sort of beat to death, but we should bring Giovinco up real quickly here because he could have offered, I think, something different off the bench. Certainly a free kick, a dead ball kind of a specialist that they could have had on there. Is that a symptom of the overall problems, the Giovinco not even getting a sniff?
Yes, it's arrogance. You know where I stand with Giovinco, Kevin, and Duane. You know how many clips and how many shows I've done on this. I'm tired of talking about it because I basically had a wonderful laugh last night on the show and laughing that Svensson, an MLSer in Sweden, a third division player that plays on the Sweden team that started in Italy, are going to the World Cup. But Giovinco, even off the bench, I've always said he's not a starter, but off the bench, he is absolutely a guy that can give you 20, 25 minutes, a dead ball specialist. Why not bring him? But because this arrogance of the senior citizen Ventura, and even going back to Conte, with all due respect, that MLS is Mickey Mouse, but others don't think like that. Iceland don't think like that. Sweden don't think like that. Other countries don't think like that. But the Italians now, this is why I said, guys, this is a beautiful funeral. This is where now everything will be thrown out. Everything will be discussed. Everything will be brought to the table to say, here we go. This is long overdue.
Anthony, I would be remiss to have you on the show and not talk to you about the Canadian Premier League. We announced the news last week on the show here that the Premier League will not start in 2018. It's now looking for 2019, and even speculation that it will not happen maybe until 2020. But 2019 is the goal as of right now. What is your thoughts on the next few steps for the Canadian Premier League?
Well, I'm going to be careful what I'm going to say, boys, because I think you know where I stand in my relationship with the CPL folks. But I have to nonetheless say what I feel in my heart and in my mind. Duane, once again, is like a pit bull on that bone that has a little bit of meat left on it, and he grabs on it and watch out. And he's correct. 2018, of course, it's too late to kick off in 2018. You need to sell sponsorships, season tickets, on and on and on. 2018 is gone. 2019 is the target. If 2019 isn't the target, then shame on each and every one that's working in the CPL office right now and in the CSA offices for not getting this done. What I'm frustrated about, what I'm upset about, what I'm absolutely, I'm speechless about is why are so many hurdles in the way still? Why are we getting this done? Why isn't every other project put on the side and put this right on the forefront? I don't care about the women's team right now. God bless them. I don't care about the World Cup bid, because without the World Cup bid, without a national league, you're not going to get the World Cup bid. I don't care about whatever other friggin' programs and projects they're working on. This needs to be the first and foremost thing on their plate, CSA and CPL.
Anthony Totera, host of Red Card Radio, thank you very much for your time today. You can follow on Anthony on Twitter at @4Totera. Have a nice day, Anthony.
Guys, keep up the great work. Really appreciate it. Have a great show.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. Duane, how did you react when you saw those 3 whistles being blown and Italy being knocked off?
I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised based on what I saw in the first leg, certainly, and what I saw in particular against Spain. I think that's when I first realized that this was no sure thing, that Italy was going to qualify, was in those games against Spain, where I went in to watch those very excited, and it really was a one-sided affair with the Spanish, who look very good. Although, do they look good, or does Italy look bad? We'll have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, maybe it's Italy that really was that bad. But it's hard to tell right now, because Italy kind of skewed our power rankings or a little bit. Usually when a team doesn't look good again, it's Italy. Like, yeah, it's Italy. They stifle you. They stop you. They almost suffocate you because of the defensive play. It's not the case this year. So maybe Spain just are good, but maybe Italy was that bad.
Yes, well, exactly. I don't quite know how to handicap Spain now. I was ready to put them as a co-favorite to win the World Cup after those Italy games, but now maybe I'll back off that a little bit. It's going to be a fascinating World Cup. That actually, you know what, in hindsight, after a few hours had passed and sort of the shock of it had worn off, the shock of not having Italy there. And that's what, honestly, you asked a question directly what I was thinking of in the final whistle. It said it's going to be a little sad in Toronto, as much as people like to make fun of the honking horns and complain about traffic or shirtless young men on College Street or whatever you might complain about. And there's a lot of people in Toronto that like to complain about a lot of things. But as much as you sort of do that, it adds a vibrancy to the World Cup. And the Italians are such a massive part of the scene in Toronto during a World Cup that to not have them in it is going to be weird. And I think it might impact the overall vibe in the city during it. And that's almost on a personal, selfish level where I was most coming from. It's going to take away from my party a little bit. And that's going to be unfair, but unfortunate. But then again, Portugal's in, so we're fine.
Yeah, I was going to say at least Portugal's in, and Greece is not. But usually when you have Greece, Portugal, and Italy, yeah, it's a party. At least this year, it'll be a party. It'll be a party on some part of St. Austria, Montreal, but not the whole way, because little Italy is going to be quite sad during the World Cup. You're right. But when we're looking at this, we talked to Anthony, the Ventura, the manager and the selectioner, who made bad decision and was really willing to die on heels with decisions that he took. The fact that he didn't play yesterday, and we also had an image of him going to see De Rossi, be like, okay, your turn to go in, and him saying, what, me? We need to score 2 goals. Why are you asking me? Go see the striker on the bench. Go see the guy who scores goals usually. Why are you asking me? Fine, I'll do it, but you're stupid. That decision doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's an odd one for sure. Anthony made stubborn is the way to put it. And I don't want to belabor the Giovinco stuff because Giovinco's just really, he's a convenient illustration for a problem that isn't about him per se. It's about an overall philosophy that goes into selection. So
sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, Duane, it's even more than that. To make a decision that would literally say and admit that you were wrong before. You remember those managers saying, well, if you go to MLS, you're not going to get a look. Or if you go play somewhere else, if you don't do what we want you to do, we're not going to get a look. At one point, you need to realize as a selection guy, as a manager, that those are mistakes and you need to correct the mistakes. And when you're not willing to correct mistakes because you're stubborn and you're willing to just keep the same course, keep going the way where your team is not going to qualify, well, it's stubbornness and it's ego at the wrong time in the wrong place, no?
Precisely, yeah. And just to continue on that, again, and I want to put Giovinco aside as a personality. I want to take that sort of divisive sort of player out of the equation, because there are certain people that listen to this show that are not TFC fans, that when they hear the Giovinco argument, they sort of go, la, 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 you're just a TFC guy. No, it's not about that. It's the symbolism of them just refusing to look at a guy just because he's a certain place. And that goes beyond just MLS. They're refusing to look at players they're not playing in their big teams, right? They're not looking outside the box. They're not thinking outside the box. And that is resulting, as Anthony said, in a very static sort of approach to the game, which didn't allow them to adjust. Now, I think on a personal level, to go back to Giovinco for a second, he would have been a useful weapon off the bench because of his free kick specialties. But putting that aside again, it's really about that sort of stubbornness. And look, now that it's done, and I was on a radio hit this morning with David Foote, our friend David Foote, at my hometown radio station of CJBQ. I was on that. I don't know if that's on demand or not, but if it is, I'll get it out there, where I said this very thing. I think that there's a blessing in this. This is going to open up the World Cup a little bit more. A lot of big teams that we're used to seeing in this won't be there. I don't think that necessarily means that we won't have one of the traditional winners win it, because we still have Germany, we still have Spain, we still have Brazil in this. We have countries that have won this thing before in this, but I think we will see more countries go deeper in this than they ever had before. And I think that's going to be an exciting thing, because we're, a lot of these sort of static, stale, old world countries that we're just used to seeing there aren't there, and it'll be a kick in the pants for them, and maybe that will bring them back to the next World Cup, with a little bit of fire under their butt, so to speak.
In life and in sports especially, I always say this: sports is just like a microcosm of life in general, right? So you can say whatever you want, and you can find example in sports to illustrate those points. What I'm saying is, in life, if you don't adapt and think progressively about what's next, and you just dwell on what you have done and what you're doing now, the rest of the sports world, the rest of the soccer world will pass you by. The rest of the sports world passed Italy by.
Yeah, and look, they have so much resources, and there's so much passion for the game in that country that I have no doubt that they'll be back. No doubt at all. This isn't a Hungary here, that they're not going to disappear off the map after being at the top of the game, right?
Hey, they made the Euro 2 years ago.
I know, but
Gabo Correa with his sweatpants, and that's what I remember.
Keeper, yes, that's the enduring image of the Euro. Yeah, when the show started with the Euro. So there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, look, they'll be back, but I'm excited by the countries like Belgium that. We talk about Iceland all the time, so let's put them on a shelf for now. That's clearly a great story, but it's almost become a boring story. We've talked about it for so long now, and
it's a trope. It's a trope now.
Yeah, but you look at countries like Belgium that have risen up and are playing not only, like, the thing about Belgium, for instance, is Iceland. It's a great story because they're there and they're probably going to make the round of 16, and they're going to be a noble warrior until they're eliminated. The thing about Belgium is they could win the damn thing. They might be the best team in the world, and I think that speaks to how small nations now, with the right sort of approach to development, the right sort of approach to selection, and the right sort of approach to tactics, can not just compete, could perhaps challenge these old world countries to win a World Cup. And that would be a great thing for the sport worldwide, if you could have countries outside of the traditional ones deep and potentially winning.
Does that mean that Canada will make the World Cup at one point? Because we're not a traditional market. If one thing's for sure, Canada's not a traditional soccer country. Can we make the World Cup before I want to make the World Cup while I still have hair on my head, please?
Fair enough. Well, boats almost sailed for me. Well, hair on my face, not my head. Nonetheless, look, yeah, a lot can change in a generation. That's what I'll say. What I've always said about the Canada thing, too, is as bleak as it seems to people. I mean, 10 years is a long time in the game, and you can have a lot happen in it. And 20 years is even longer, right? I mean, that's kind of cliche to say it that way, but it's kind of obvious to say it that way.
Well, they even say, Duane, that sometimes 20 years is like twice as long as 10 years. Did you know that?
Yes, sometimes people have said that. Yes, people that hashtag math. There we go. At any rate, no, it's yeah. I think a lot can change quickly if you go about things the right way, and it ties into sort of the stuff that we've been talking about a long time with Canada. When you want to go back to that for a second, and we need to get the league started. Once we get the league started, I believe there are the resources here that we can certainly get to World Cups. The step to go beyond getting to World Cups to competing to win them is a very, very large one, and one that very bigger countries in Canada haven't come close to yet. So let's not talk absurdities here when it comes to that. But I think the U.S., if they turn things around and get things in the right way, could potentially win a World Cup in our lifetimes. And I've been saying that for 10 years. Now, people have been saying that Africa could win a World Cup. Africa collectively, a country from Africa could win a World Cup since I was a little boy. So, sometimes things don't change quickly too. So we'll see. But I think that this one, when I look at the qualifying and I look at countries like Holland and Italy now, and other nations like Cameroon's not there, Ivory Coast is not there. Now Africa's a little more tumultuous. So
even Ghana, when you look at Africa, it's a different crop of African powerhouse that we're seeing now. Like when Morocco qualifying, you have South Africa qualifying. It's a different group of teams than just 4 years ago.
Yeah, Egypt, I think, is the one to really watch for.
Exactly.
In Africa. That's an interesting country there that will be in a World Cup for the first time in a long time. Look, it's a really interesting World Cup. It's too bad that it's got some sort of controversy around it in terms of what it's going to look like off the pitch, and hopefully that works itself out, because I think this has the potential to be a really great World Cup on the pitch, and I hope that in a year's time we'll know what will happen. But in, I guess, 8 months' time we'll be talking about what great football we're watching and how unpredictable this World Cup is, because there's a lot of potential there, I think. And you know what? Let me speak the unspeakable here. England's just won a couple Youth World Cups.
Oh,
and
jeez.
You never know. You never know.
I can't handle that. Like, my heart's not going to be able to handle that.
There you go.
Imagine England in the final versus Germany.
I think Germany's probably going to win the World Cup.
And
if I
then,
had to pick right now.
And then in the 90th minute, 3 whistles blows and you're going to penalties. I can't handle that.
Yes, exactly.
What's football, Duane?
It's when
it's a sport played
22 men in short pants chase the ball around for 90 minutes. In the end, Germany wins. Yes,
exactly.
Final thought on England, real quickly, Kevin. We should touch on the USL final after this before we say goodbye for the day. But England has this great thing that what they do is they take you to the depths of complete disbelief in them, and they somehow give you just enough hope that when you lead into a major tournament, you think to yourself just before it goes, maybe.
Well, Harry Kane's scoring goals. We're having a young team. They're like Sterling is coming up, and there's Dele Alli, and there's other great talent, and Harry Kane can score. We can win the World Cup, Duane.
And then they fall in the round of 16 to Algeria or something. That's what happens. But I don't know if they've ever lost to Algeria per se. But nonetheless, that's generally how they go out. Or Iceland in the Euros. There you go.
Well, yeah, it's going to be very, very fascinating. And you mentioned Egypt, so let's just finish there. Shout out to Bob Bradley. 4 years later, but I'm not going to be convinced that Bob Bradley doesn't have a hand in where Egypt is now. He literally laid the groundworks for the program that followed him.
Well, he saw them through, literal coups, right?
Like it was one game there.
Yeah, it's craziness going on. Yeah. All right. Quickly, Kevin. Louisville. Congratulations to them, USL champions yesterday. Maybe we'll look to get a guest on later in the week, but certainly a 1-0 win. It wasn't the most artistic final, as most artistic finals are. There's kind of a fun.
Even the commentators talked about that, because when you're doing radio and television, they have a microphone and the game ends. Well, kind of have to be careful to make sure the mic is off.
Mute, guys, mute. I do the opposite. I leave mute on. There you go. Whenever you hear a blank, guys, that's me forgetting to hit mute. Anyway, behind the curtain that. All right. We'll look to get a guest later to talk. Maybe we'll see if we can get Mark Anthony Kay on. I'll put that approach out right after this show here, and we've had him on before. Maybe we can get him again. He's a champion, and congratulate him for that. If not, we'll see what we can do. And we'll talk more about the USL final in the days ahead. But any final thoughts, Kevin, before we say goodbye in the day?
My final thoughts have to go with Marc Dos Santos. Last week, it was talked about a few times, and we talked about French journalists here in Montreal saying, look, my choice of club is made for 2018. There's an agreement, and we're going to know later this week which club it is. And the few things that he mentioned for another French journalist yesterday on a French radio station in Montreal, 91.9, talking to Jean-Charles, Marc Dos Santos mentioning, well, yeah, Jean-Charles didn't ask necessarily the questions that we would because of the difference of knowledge for the Department of Soccer, but Jean-Charles asked, are you staying in ESL? And Marc Dos Santos' answer was, well, I'm staying in the second division of United States Soccer. And as of right now, there's only one league in second division. It's not the NASL. It's the USL. The other point he was making is he's getting closer to home with team with ambition and team that is solid, you must think financially, and solid as well in their project and their community and their ambitions. Not a lot of choices. Ottawa's got De Guzman. Could Dos Santos go back to Ottawa? I don't think a team with ambition would be a clear way to describe Ottawa. There's a few clubs that jump to mind, Duane. We'll know more later this week. But in my opinion,
I think that
there's two.
Speculate.
In my opinion, there's two. One that is very close to home, but I don't think fits quite clearly with what the club you mentioned. I think it's either Rhinos or Cincinnati. I would see Mark Dos Santos with a standalone team because he does not want to be a head coach of a team, of a two teams, and being told how to handle his players. I see Mark Dos Santos either with the Rochester Rhinos or FC Cincinnati.
There's also an expansion team launching in Nashville next year.
Yeah, but it's not closer to home, though. That's why he says he's really getting closer to home. Cincinnati is not that close, but compared to San Francisco or Nashville, it is.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll have to see it. And certainly he does apparently have a job lined up, which means San Francisco's done. So, and he's not going to get a chance. And the only way Mark Dos Santos gets into MLS is, I think, if he attaches himself to a team like Cincinnati, that maybe is looking for someone to take them over the top and then move them into MLS. That would be a natural fit there. You're absolutely right there. That's why I said that. I don't know how attached Nashville's USL project is to their expansion bid, to be honest, off the top of my head. But certainly something like that would make a lot of sense. And Sacramento is clearly not closer to home. So probably we're looking at the East Coast.
It's actually like kind of a bit closer, but you're talking about like instead of 3,000 kilometers, you're talking about like 295 something like that.
Well, Cincinnati, look, forgive me off the top of my head, I could not name their coach right now, but
Alan Koch, former Simon Fraser University and BC coach, and former Whitecaps FC2 coach as well. Alan Koch is right now. He was the interim. He was named the coach early on last year when their original coach from the beginning of the season got fired.
Fair enough. And Cincinnati certainly did underachieve this year, I would have to say, based on the support they had. They had that long run in the US Open Cup, but I don't think they were happy with their league position, and that would be something that's interesting there. All right, let's take the day now. We'll call that a day. We'll let Italy sink in. If you're Irish out there, hope the eyes are smiling on you.
Denmark, Ireland today. It's after today, Duane, I think we'll be set. We'll know at least who goes to the World Cup. We'll know the groups in a few weeks.
We do have the two games tomorrow too, but yeah, we're almost to the very end. All right. On that note, Kevin, say goodbye.
You can follow Duane on Twitter as always at 24th Minute, and you can follow our guest of today, Anthony Totera, at 4Totera. That's the number 4, Totera. And as always, until tomorrow, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.